Hi everyone and welcome back to Brush and Bubbles. If you're new to our channel, then welcome. We bring you new art tutorials every week so you can get creative from the comfort of your own homes. I am so excited by the theme of today's painting because it's actually something we've been wanting to do for a really long time. We thought it would actually be fun to do a whole series of these paintings, but we can use different shapes, different colours, and also different body types. Today we are going to be creating this abstract scene with the body drawn over the top. I absolutely love paintings like this. I feel like they work in any type of house. They're very timeless. You can use any kind of shades that you want, and we're going to create all sorts of different shaped bodies. Our bodies come in so many different beautiful and wonderful shapes and sizes. So I feel like this is a really lovely way for you to express how you feel. You might want to do your own body, you might want to paint someone else's, you might want to make one up, but we're just going to allow ourselves to get lost within these paintings. So this will be our first painting of the series, and then what we'll do is we'll do a couple more that we can then display either side of this one. So I'll be showing you the colours that I've made, but like I mentioned, always, you can go wild with your colours. You don't have to use the same colours that I've used here. You might want to go really bright. You might even want to go more monotone and just use black, whites and greys. It's completely up to you. I'll then be showing you a few different options on how you can draw in your bodies. So I've kept this super simple. We're just going to do a few curves and I'm going to break them down. I think it's just really important to remember that bodies come in all different shapes and sizes. Don't overthink them. They don't need to look perfect. In fact, I think sometimes when they don't look perfect is when you end up with something really unique. So I hope that you're all excited to create this with me today. And without further ado, let's just jump straight into our tutorial where I'll talk you through everything you'll need to create this at home. In front of me, I have my canvas. I'm going to be painting in portrait, but if you've got a specific place in your home that you want this painting to go and you prefer to paint in landscape, you always can. I have two different size brushes. I've got a square shaped medium one and then a smaller pointy one. I've also got here a pencil and a scrap piece of paper. So I'd recommend having one of these on standby just because we can kind of map out our design, we can practice it, we can decide what kind of shaped body we want to do first on our scrap piece of paper before we move on to painting it onto our canvas. I've then got some kitchen towel to dab my brushes on, a glass of water, a palette to pop all of my paints in, and my acrylic paints. So the fun thing about this painting is you can totally make it your own and use any colours and shades that you want. I'm going to be going for quite a neutral, earthy kind of palette with the background of my painting, just keeping it very abstract and quite calming in the tones that I'm using. But please feel free, if you want to go wild and use really bright colours, rainbow colours, pastel colours. It's totally up to you, whatever you want to do for your own painting. I've also got a black felt tip pen here. I'm not sure if I'll need this yet and if I'll use it, but I do always say if you have got a Sharpie or a black felt tip pen or any kind of pen lying around and you would prefer to draw your body on with it rather than paint it on, it's just nice to have it on standby just in case you want to use it. In my paint palette, I have some black, quite a lot of white, pink, yellow and red paint. So the lovely thing about the background of these paintings are we can be completely free with what we're doing and we don't have to overthink the shapes or the colours that we're making too much. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to create the first colour that I want to use. And like I mentioned before, I'm going to stick to quite earthy tones with my painting and I'm going to keep them more on the pastel side, so just adding more white to them. So picking up my medium brush and moving over to my palette, I'm just going to mix up that first colour now. So I'm just scooping up a large amount of white paint and just moving it over to a spare bit of my palette. And then to this, I'm just going to add the tiniest amount of pink because this pink is quite dark. So I'm just adding a tiny bit and I'm going to mix it into this white. So you can just carry on adding whichever shade that you're wanting to your white. So I'm just going to keep adding the pink until I'm happy with the colour of it. And then what we're going to do is, because I want to keep my tones slightly more earthy, I'm going to add the tiniest, and I really mean tiniest, amount of black to this, just to give it more of a grey undertone. If you want to, you can always mix up a little bit of grey paint just so that you can control how much black you're adding. So honestly, I've just dipped the very corner of my brush into the black I'm going to mix it in just because such a little goes a long way. As soon as you're happy with your shade, we're just going to add a drop of water to this, really mix it in. It just makes the paint a little bit more fluid. So I've just taken this first shade and I'm just going to cover up the whole background of my canvas with it. I just want to prime the canvas nicely before I go ahead and add my other shapes. And I quite like this very subtle, earthy pink tone that I've created. So I'm just going to add this to the whole background of my canvas. I'm going to make sure that I wrap it around the sides and the top and the bottom as well. As soon as you're happy with your background, we're just going to wash off our big brush. While we give our background a chance to dry, we can now just move on and mix up our next colour. So I'm just picking up my clean big brush, and again I'm going to start with some white as my base. And then to this I'm just going to pick up a little bit of pink, a little bit of yellow, and a tiny bit of red. I'm going to give it a mix and see what colour I end up with. As soon as your background is nice and dry, you can then apply this next colour to your canvas. Now this is the fun bit because we're going to start adding some shapes in. Now it's up to you what kind of shapes you want to do for your painting. You might want to stick more angular with your backgrounds and go for more squares, rectangles, triangles, or you might want to stick to more circular, rounded sort of shapes. I'm going to start by adding a few rounded shapes in there just because the body I'm going to be placing on top has got all sorts of different angles and curves to it. So I'm just going to start by bringing down a curved like wobble in my background. Again, I'm just making sure I'm painting it around the sides. And it might come off this side. And then I'm simply just going to fill it in with that same shade. As soon as you're happy with your first shape, I'm just going to wash off my brush again and move back over to my palette to mix up my next shade. So I'm just going to use some white as my base again, and then to this I'm just going to add a little bit of this red colour and give it a good mix. So this has given me a very light sort of corally pink tone, and to this I just want to dull it down slightly. So again I'm just picking up the tiniest bit of black with the very tip of my brush, and I'm just going to mix that back in. So as soon as you're happy with your next shade, you can just go ahead and add another shape to your canvas. So I think I'm going to do a sort of curved like shape over here. If you want to, your shapes can always overlap as well. Again, I'm just going to fill it in and wrap it around the sides. Whenever you're ready, you can then mix up another shade. So I'm actually just going to work with this one as my base, and I just want to sort of darken it up slightly to make more of an orangey tone. So I'm just going to add a little bit more yellow to it and a little bit more red. I'm just going to give that a mix. Whenever you're ready, you can just add in your next shape. So I think I'm just going to go for it, not overthink it. Just going to do a shape down here. Whenever you're ready, you can just give your brush another wash in your water. So this is your opportunity to just take a little step back from your canvas. Decide if there's anything else that you want to add. I've kept mine super simple just because I love that simplistic look that these paintings often have. So take a little step back, look at something else for a moment, and then come back to your canvas and decide if there's anything else you want to add. And if you don't, then we're just going to leave it to dry nicely before we go ahead and add in our figure. So what I would suggest doing is just grabbing that spare bit of paper and your pencil or a pen, and we're going to give it a little practice now. So the great thing about painting the body is that the body comes in all sorts of wonderful different shapes and sizes, so we cannot go wrong with this. Each body type is completely unique and beautiful in its own way, so I really want you all just to enjoy this moment. I'm going to show you a few different options that you can use for your painting. So the first body that I'm going to do is facing the front, and I'm going to have sort of the boob area and then bringing it down to the curve of the hips, and then we're going to have the belly button and the legs. So what I like to do is just do this nice and gradually. So the first shape that we'll create is sort of like a curved shape, and then it comes into a round, almost like a semicircle, a little bit like a hook shape. And then from this, we'll just curve the line, just where you see this curve here, we'll bring the line from about there, and we're going to curve it in, and then we're going to curve it right out for the hip and bring it all the way down. So we've got that kind of lovely curve shape there. What we can then do is add a little V shape here. And then just where the V on the left-hand side is, we can then just bring that round, and that will be the leg. We can then add a little sort of almost like a comma shape for the belly button. And then if you want to add some more details into the breast area, you can. So that's one idea for one of your shapes. If you can see, it's lovely and simple. We're just literally creating a few shapes, creating the curves of the body, and we're not even going to do anything on the other side. We're going to keep it lovely and simple. The other shape that you might like to do is just focusing on the lower half of the body. So what you could do is do this sort of rounded shape here, bringing it out for the hips, and back down the leg. And then over here you could do another sort of the V shape just with the leg, and then have the belly button, and you might just want that area on your painting. The other option, I'm just going to draw that in between these two, is we're going to have a line which sort of symbolises the neck and the shoulder. So I'm just bringing it down, curving it, and then it's going to curve around and stop. And then about here, I'm just going to curve around, and then almost draw a circle, and then we stop. And then from this side where the boob is, we can then bring the waist in and the hips out. And then we could just have the boob area, and if we wanted to add the belly button, then we could. It actually looks quite cool having them all together overlapping, so you could always do that for your painting. Or like I mentioned before, you might want to do a whole series of these, so have one shape in one in the other, and another one in the last one. I'd always recommend just giving the bodies a little practice first, because you can do these, like I mentioned, in any shapes and sizes. And we are going a little bit abstract and stylized with these. So please don't worry if the proportions don't look right, because bodies, like I say, come in all sorts of different proportions, all different shapes, all different sizes. So we cannot go wrong with this. When our background is nice and dry, we can then move on to creating the colour that we're going to use to paint in our bodies. So this is your moment to decide how you want to do this. You might want to do it with paint. You might want to have a little think about what colour you want to do. You could go for black. You could even just use pure white. You might want to mix up another earthy tone or a grey, or you might want to pick up your felt tip pen, any colour that you like, and do this with a felt tip pen instead of the paint. So I'm just going to mix up the colour of paint that I'm going to use now, and I'm going to go for a grey shade. So I've got my white in here, so I'm just going to add a little bit of black to it and give it a good mix. If you are going for the paint, then I would just make sure once you've mixed it up, just add a few drops of water to it. It just really helps thin the paint out. Makes it more of an inky consistency, and it's a lot easier for us to draw nice crisp lines with once we've added that water in there and given it a really good mix in. The other tip I have if you're using your paintbrush to draw in your body is just pick up your paint, and if you've watched any of our other tutorials you've probably seen me do this before, but you simply just push down your brush onto a spare bit of your palette, twist the handle and drag the brush along, and it just creates this sort of trail of paint. But what it does is it just brings that brush to a nice point so it's easier to draw with. So just make sure, however you're doing it, either if you're dashing off your paint or you're twizzling the brush, you're just making sure you haven't got too much paint on the end when you come in to draw in your body. So I know that this seems like the scary bit because we're now drawing the body onto the canvas, but like I mentioned, bodies come in all different shapes and sizes. You can't really go wrong with this, and if all else fails, just go totally abstract and you can create a Picasso-like body. So I've just loaded up my paintbrush with the paint, and I think I'm going to go for this kind of shape that I've got here on the far right. So I'm just going to start by drawing in that sort of breast shape. So I'm just going to start at the top. I'm going to curve it in, curve it out, swoop it round. So I have that kind of shape going on. I'm going to pick up some more of my paint. And then from the left side of the boob, I'm just going to swerve it around and then swerve it out just to create that sort of waist and hip area. Remember, you can take your time with this. There's absolutely no rush whatsoever. So I'm just curving it in. And then I'm going to curve it out. I want the sort of the curve out of the hips to be wider than where the breasts are, just because I want my lady to have lovely big hips. Remember as well, you don't have to bring the body all the way down to come off the end of the canvas. If you don't want to, you can just have it sort of floating within the middle. The next shape I'm going to add is this bit of the lady's leg. So I'm just going to start around here, and I'm just going to do that sort of V-like shape. And then from the left-hand side of that V, I'm just going to bring this line around in a curve-like way. I'm then going to add the belly button, and the belly button's in this kind of area of the body. Then I might just add a sort of semicircle-like shape to symbolise where her nipple would be. So this is now your opportunity to decide if you want to carry on with your painting. You might want to do what we mentioned before and add loads of these different bodies on top of each other. You could even do them in different coloured paints or pens or mediums. It's completely up to you. I'm going to leave my painting how it is just because I want to add this to a series of body paintings, and I'm then going to display them all together. But I'd have a little think about what you want to achieve out of your own painting. So as soon as you're finished painting in the body, you have then completed your masterpiece. I'm so excited to see everyone's versions of this painting. So if you happen to be on social media, just give us a little tag at Brush and Bubbles, or just send them to us via email, because we absolutely love seeing what you've created at home. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope that you all enjoyed that. Be sure to hit the subscribe button as well, just so that you get a little notification, because we will be doing a couple more different variations of this painting to add to our series. Thanks everyone, and I really look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye!